The Gift of Ruin, Chapter 1. Hard and cold, smooth and leathery, the skin of her dead grandmother's forehead felt right and wrong as she traced a small cross with her thumb. The priest had told them to do it. A tradition, he said. Eyre knew nothing about it, Christianity, dead people, or otherwise. Then, compelled beyond reason, her hand moved down Grandma's face towards her neck. The silver metal gleamed against the crisp white of her pressed shirt. Eyre reached for it, felt the raised stars around the relief of a woman on the silver oval. When she cupped it, the necklace detached into her hand. Or maybe it hadn't been secured at all, but Eyre was too embarrassed to be caught fiddling around with the body. Instead, she palmed the item and pulled her hands together in a prayer pose that made her even more self-conscious. As she spun away from the casket and hurried down the aisle, her eyes caught her mother's gaze as she passed their pew. Bathroom, Eyre mouthed. The sign for the bathroom pointed downstairs to the basement. Unsettling and novel for a California girl, she descended into a small, empty room with 2 stalls and a sink. Quiet, muffled. She glanced at her reflection, her pale face contrasting sharply against the scratchy black wool dress, before looking down at the object gleaming in her open hand. Oh my gosh, I've robbed Grandma's grave. She stared at the relic in her palm. The stars around the veiled woman in the long dress sparkled, and a jolt of pain went up her arm. Her heart cramped, then pricked, then burst into agony, as each heartbeat pushed the delicate muscle onto spikes within her. The pain marched on with each breath, compounding until she sank to the floor, clutching her chest, stars breaking out in glittering points across her vision. The smell of lemon cleaner mixed with sweet almond soap shoved in and out of her nose as she took in tremendous breaths to manage the pain, as if the air could soothe it. I won't make it out of this bathroom, she thought, her vision darkening. She gripped the sink, desperately trying to pull herself up, but the pain pressed harder, grinding through her chest. She had to make herself walk, to get help, even if she had to crawl. Do 12-year-olds die of heart attacks? She fought back the panic, and her other hand slapped against the sink. The metal, still hanging on its delicate chain, clinked against the porcelain, but Eyre didn't hear it. All she saw was the image of the woman again. As she collapsed, slipping against the floor, the metal flipped over. 2 hearts, one burning, wrapped in thorns, the other pierced by a sword. A pulse of pain shot through her skull like a harp string plucked at 1,000,000 decibels, thrumming deep within, exploding in her ears. Her body lay prone on the waxed linoleum. I'm dying. She had stolen a holy object from a dead body. In a church, she'd brought down a curse. But the pain, it retreated, slowly. Tiny knives in her chest retracted from her heart into the booby trap she had set off by robbing the tomb, then gone. Eyre groaned, pushing herself up, legs trembling beneath her. She stumbled to the mirror, sweat slicked her forehead, her nose, dripping in response to the agony. Blood, 2 small trickles ran from her earlobes, tracing down her neck. She splashed cold water on her face. Should she tell her parents? Would they care? Would they even believe if she couldn't prove she was physically hurt? She didn't want to risk their disappointment, their accusations that she was making it all about her. Her feet scraped up the stairs, the old wood creaking underfoot. She gripped the metal tightly in her hand, wishing the dress had pockets, wishing for an escape. Maybe it was a one-time thing, a blip. But what if it happens again? She shuddered at the thought. If it happens again, I'll have to say something. She scanned the sanctuary from the back entrance. Grandma's casket stood closed, a shiny gray pod ready for the earth to take it. Everyone was gone, except for a pair of yappers that lingered inside by the exit door. She'd missed most of the funeral mass. The air outside stung her face. The wind whipped around the church, and Eyre wished for her sweater, though she should really have a jacket. It had snowed in some time, but little pockets of dirty ice clung to the corners of buildings and walls. She hoped her mom grabbed it from the pew so she wouldn't have to bother them, to wait while she went back inside to look for it. Her eyes canvassed the parking lot. There, in the idling silver Ford Escape, sat her father, her mother, standing outside with a perturbed posture, scanning for her. She spotted Eyre from afar, beckoned with an impatient wave, and ducked into the rental. Eyre waved back and hurried, clutching her chest that only held the echo of an ache. "Sorry, Mama," she said, pulling the door shut behind her. relieved to see her sweater thrown onto the back seat. I didn't feel good, but now I'm okay. Her mother didn't look up. The silence in the car told her everything she needed to know. Salt crunched under the rental's tires as her father sped off to make up for the minutes they'd waited for her. Her mom flicked through her phone, digging for photos of Grandma. There weren't many, and she had to pore over old albums and Facebook and download what she could find. "Who's doing the slideshow again?" her mother asked her father. And like that, Era's mind exploded. Screens playing little movies filled the car. On one, she watched her mother, younger, more vibrant, handing Grandma a yellow bouquet of tulips, their first meeting. On another, she saw her mother on the phone, sitting with Era as a toddler, telling a woman that the flight was simply too long for them to make with a small child. As Era's eyes flickered from one image to the next, she could feel Grandma's smooth handshake as she grasped her mother's hand, smell something cooking off in the distance during that phone call. Era's breath caught in her throat. She didn't want to see these images, these memories that weren't her own. Her hand flew over her eyes, but the images merely continued to play against the rainbow backdrop of her eyelids. "It's okay, I'm okay. Just a little hallucination. Worst case, it's early onset schizophrenia. They say it hits around puberty." Era's cool, collected thoughts tried to talk her through the madness. But then her father spoke. "My cousin Martha, she's playing the slideshow after the wake, so you better hurry. You should have worked on this during the plane ride. You had hours." The screens flashed on again, but this time they felt different, harder, more rational, more her father. Era dared to drop her hand, to peek into the slit of light. Her father looked back at her. "What's wrong with you? You going to be sick? Because not in the rental." "No, Then it began, the memories. Her father's thoughts, pressed against her, suffocating. Selfish, 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 selfish. Era could feel the weight of it. His disappointment, his irritation, his frustration with her. How these ideas of her could never change because they were tied to something deep in himself, anchored there to a foundation of selfishness, one with roots that wound and reached beneath what she could see. There was the truth he buried beneath his actions. He didn't want a daughter. He wanted a son. Everything made sense now. Why he pushed her so hard to play sports, and the disappointment when she picked tennis over basketball 2 years ago. Why he never understood her. Why he hated the things she liked. Why he called her interests useless girly crap. 1,000 chunks of plaster and cement rained down on her, ricocheting off her tender body as her sad little castle collapsed around her. She suspected she was a perpetual inconvenience to them, her parents. Now she saw it. Her heart tore open and bore the black secret to her. "He doesn't love me." Era sat up straighter, her mind a storm of realization. The memories blurred, exploded, crackling like fireworks in her head. She took small sips of the air through her nose, desperately willing herself not to cry, but a tear slipped down her cheek regardless. Mother, who leaned into the mirror fixing her eyebrows, noticed. "Oh, come on, Era. You barely knew Grandma. You only saw her, 5 or 6 times in your whole life?" The words hit her like a blow to the gut. The air left her lungs. Her hand clenched around the metal hidden tightly in her palm. There was no escape. Sparks of memory flared again, burning her like pops of hot oil from a pan. Her mother's voice, talking to her children in the park, clearing her mind. "I don't want children." Her father's nonchalant response. "I'm fine either way, whatever you want." Another clip. The antibiotics, the pregnancy, the threats. Her grandmother had threatened to cut them out of her will if her mother had an abortion, said it was an unforgivable crime against God. She had been a religious woman. She wanted to murder me. Now she understood why they only visited Montreal once. Mom hated Grandma after that, and Grandma never respected her again. Era peeled back her finger slightly and stared at the metal edge hidden in her hand, and remembered the cool forehead she touched. "Thank you," she thought, "for fighting for my life. Wherever you are, Grandma. Thank you."